Myself, Umakant Soni. I am also an alumnus of IIT Kanpur, 2001 pass out. And last 20 years I've actually spent in making lots of errors in building technology, building companies, investing in them. I have with me here Subhashish, my partner in crime. Subhashish Banerjee, he is the Chief Investment Officer at ARTPARK. ARTPARK stands for AI and Robotics Technology Park that we have set up in Bangalore together with Indian Institute of Science. And I also have with me Hemant. Hemant is also from IIT Kanpur, and he is actually in charge of building this stuff. So, you know, he gets to build all the cool stuff. We are more into investing in people who build cool stuff. Okay, so I'll just quickly take you through and an interesting session, and we would like to make it interactive. So please feel free to ask me any questions that you might have. The idea is to actually not just give you a perspective on building AI and robotics companies, actually give you a little bigger perspective on, like, you know, how people build companies, what goes through when you build these companies. So if I look at here, and AI has gone through many of the evolutionary cycles. It was supposed to be the in thing in 80s, and then it went into winter, and then, you know, again it thawed, and, you know, now with the, you know, something happened in, you know, late 2009, 2010, and suddenly the deep neural network started to work because you actually had more computing power. But what you see is kind of very interesting, you know. Some of AI will be more than human intelligence by 2029. In fact, I was actually working in a company, and I read this interesting article by Rick Kurzweil in 2008, and I quit my job and I said that, hey, 2008, it's going to be another 20 years. But if this indeed turns out to be true, then we could be here for an interesting ride. And that's when I quit my job and I started one of the very first AI chatbot companies out of India in 2009-10. And this was a time when Siri, that a lot of you might be using on your smartphone, was also a startup. And but it was very tough, you know, because there was no enabling ecosystem in India. And that to bridge that gap, we have set up ARTPARK. And the idea is to connect research ideas which are culminating in validated research into products and companies. In this session, I'll try to take you through, you know, some of my experiences, learning, a lot of errors that I've made in either growing companies or investing in them, supporting them. One of them actually recently raised $100 million from SoftBank. It's a company called Pixis. It's very interesting. I'll show you a slide on that. Three folks from BITS Goa, they dropped out of college. Not that I'm suggesting to you that you drop out, but if you want to, then please go ahead. They dropped out. They started to build one idea. It did not work. They worked on the second idea. It did not work very well. Then on the third idea, they really, you know, they're, you know, becoming probably the first AI unicorn company in India. So I'll just take you through a bit of experience. I was hoping I would have a clicker, but can I put this full screen view in some way? What is it? How do you? Perfect. This is great. So the first question is, why do you start up? Why startup? Right. So how many of you would like to start up because you want to earn a lot of money and be shameless? It's fine. It's okay to earn money, because if you earn money, you know, people around you will actually benefit as well, and also the government will benefit, right? And it will turn out to be a good thing. So it's okay to make money. So how many of you want to do a startup because it will also make you rich and probably you can drive some interesting cars? Please raise your hand fully. Yeah, that's fine. How many of you want to do startup for passion? You want to, you know, see an idea come alive? Please raise your hand. How many of you want to do it for both money as well as passion? Come on, be shameless. Okay, that's cool. So give a big round of applause to yourself. We have a lot of people who want to chase both money and passion. And it's a very irresistible combination. Let me tell you that. The car that you see on the right hand side, do you know what car is that? You should be able to tell. Huh? Photo अच्छी quality की नहीं है. नहीं यार, come on, you can't make that excuse. So that was a car that Elon Musk actually bought after he sold his company to eBay. Okay, it's that McLaren used to, yeah, and he crashed it. So the car that the picture that you see is of his crashed car. Okay, but he was really passionate about cars, and of course he was passionate about rockets, and he's building those companies. I may not agree with a lot of his views on AI, but I agree that he is a great marketer. Okay. So it's fine. It's fine. It's okay to follow money or passion. I think in both ways you would actually move society forward. Probably you will bring some new idea to life. So just be shameless and accept. If you want to do it for money, that's great. If you want to do it for your passion, please do it. Or if you want to do it for both, that's also fine as well. And some of my friends who build companies, and you might be able to recognize some of the companies here. So on the right hand side, you will see a very interesting picture. That's where Flipkart started. That was their first office. And you can see it's a normal looking office. On the right hand side is the office that is there right now. So if you go to Bangalore, you will see their headquarters. That's what you will see. Okay. So you see this journey, and that's why I thought I'll put this, in a way so that you can see the sequence. So that is how the Flipkart website used to look. In fact, one of my very good friend, he designed the search for that. He was also my co-founder in the chatbot company that we were doing. The third picture also features an interesting alumni from IIT Kanpur. How many of you recognize him? He built Myntra, sold it to Flipkart. His name is Mukesh Bansal. He is also founder of Cult as well. And of course, the picture on the right hand side when they sold it to Walmart. For how much money? I mean, any one of you know for how much money they sold it to Walmart? Huh? Okay, 1 million? 1 billion? Okay, anybody else? 15 billion. Okay, anybody else? Please do a Google search. Okay, I'll not tell you the exact number. This is another interesting company. In 2000, we were trying to start a business club here. Okay, and we went to every single dean, dosa, dora. Give us some money and we'll start a business club here. And everybody said that, hey, this is a technical institution. Why you want to create business? It was very hard for us to say that, okay, to bring anything to life and to let it live sustainably, you have to create a business club, right? So some of the people who were there with us, they started this company called Coach. And of course, it did not work very well. They were trying to do a mobile ad network, and mobile was just coming up. Then they shifted to this concept. They named it InMobi, and that took off. And now you may be knowing Glance, right? So Naveen Tiwari, Abhay Singhal, and Amit Gupta, all of them, three of them are from IIT Kanpur, and they happen to be +1, -1 batch. We know them very well. They are good friends. But yes, of course, theirs was the first unicorn, first technology unicorn out of India. So just a little bit of trivia and history. Of course, this is my story. I did not make any billions so far, but I did make a lot of errors, right? And as my good friend likes to call it, if you make a lot of errors in small area, you sort of become an expert in that. So I'm good at making errors. And if I describe myself, it's 21 years of errors in building technology, product, strategy, investing, entrepreneurship, and now policy as well. I started the first AI chatbot company out of India. I set up the first AI-focused VC fund called Pi Ventures. We raised $30 million and we invested in 14 companies. and all esoteric companies. They range from AI company which is applying AI to logistics, to AI to pathology, to AI to breast cancer screening, to 3D printing the rockets, some cool companies. And I thought that, you know, out of these errors probably came some insights. So I would like to share some of them. But take all of my advice with a pinch of salt, since I've made a lot of errors. And so while this is what I have learned, you might learn something different, right? So please, you know, bear that in mind. So this is what we've learned so far, right? That the key to a successful venture is luck. It's about being at the right time, right? So timing is very important. You know, a friend on the right, Hemant, he was part of one of the very early drone startups that came out of IIT Kanpur. What was the name of the startup? Aurora Integrated Systems, right? And is the sound coming? Yeah. So, so they had actually a challenge because, of course, the policy was not right. This whole shift to, you know, electric propulsion wasn't there yet, right? So timing is the most critical aspect, right? So you might have a great idea, you might have a great team, but if the timing is not there, and what do I mean by timing, right? That means that there has to be something fundamentally changing in the ecosystem around you. And if your idea happens to be in that, in the time, then you might ride that wave, right? But you don't come up with an idea based on the timing, right? So either you ride that wave, or you stay long enough and change based on the, you know, the environment that you're seeing, that you eventually get the right wave behind you, rather than you swimming against that. So right timing is important, but then nobody can predict timing. So you have to stay alive long enough so that you can get the wind on your back rather than in the front. The second one is right place, right? You need to be in the middle of a very, in the middle of an ecosystem which can support you, right? So in terms of, you know, your capital. So if you need money to grow your venture, then, you know, you should be able to access capital. If you need right kind of talent, then you should be able to access that talent. If you need right kind of research to back your startup, then maybe you need to have that as well. Right problems, right? So your problems have to be big, large, right? And it's of course easy to say in hindsight, but when you're in the middle of it, you may never know. So you might actually have to follow your gut instinct, passion, whatever you want to call it. And eventually, you know, it turns out that maybe the problem was the right one to solve. So if you see, this is a, you know, the top 5 stocks, and you see Apple, you see, you know, Alphabet, then you see Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, right? Yeah, they are big, but at one point of time, they were all a startup, right? Started by one person somewhere, right? Just like, you know, Flipkart or InMobi, right? They were, you know, probably people like you who started that. So let's take that out that, hey, I can't do it because, you know, I'm just a small guy somewhere here, right? Let's examine that assumption, right? Are you timing it right? So this is what is actually happening at this moment. And I thought that I'll give you this background so that you can learn to analyze your idea with this kind of context. So it's a very, very interesting shift that's happening. If you take a look at it, 1975, right? That was the peak of the industrial economy. Okay, we had connected up to 1 billion places by rail, by road, by water. So you could sell the excess production of one place to another. Right? That's if you look at the essence of the economy, industrial economy, that was the essence. So if it was cheaper to build maybe something in US, you're selling it in maybe in India, right? And you're able to profit from it. So all the multinationals actually got formed because of it, right? And if you look at it, it's very interesting to see, right, that the total kind of assets. So this is a graph which is by an insurance companies, right? So insurance companies have to know the asset price because they insure with respect to that asset price. So it's actually very accurate. So if you look at it, out of 715 billion worth of total assets, the tangible assets, the assets that you can touch and feel, they're almost like, any guess how much times it is? Let's do a maths quiz here. 4 times, 5 times of the intangible assets. Can you read? Looks like an eye test as well. Almost like 5 times, right? So tangible assets, things which you can touch and feel, there were 5 times of the intangible ones, things that you can't see, right? If you cut to 2005, where we had connected up to 500 million people with internet, with email, that was just beginning of Facebook at that point of time, right? And the social networking was just starting. The ratio completely flipped. So if you look at it, out of $11 trillion, right? The intangible were almost $9.2 trillion or so, right? Which is almost like 4 times of the tangible one, right? And if you cut to what we see in maybe 2020, 2030, right? So the intangible assets, the digital intelligent intangibles, will be 10 times that of tangible ones. And that is a huge opportunity. Because if you see that right now, all the assets that you're seeing, right, they are in 1:4, 1:5 kind of ratio. But imagine that, the $16 trillion that AI is going to create of new economic value, a large portion of that is yet to be created. And it's a massive opportunity. So if I were to look at from the timing perspective, here's an area where everybody is going to start practically from the same space as you are, right? And it is going to change a lot. That means nobody is an expert. Even I'm not an expert. What's going to happen in 10, 15 years? I can sort of see based on some of the investment that we have done and how they're doing. But I do know that, okay, generally speaking, this is an area which is going to grow more, right? So AI-driven experience economy, where we are transitioning from knowledge economy to AI-driven experience economy. So in knowledge economy, if you had more knowledge than somebody else, then you sell it to him and you profit from it, right? So in experience economy, we're going to create and sell, barter new kind of digital experiences, right? So if I look at Alexa, how many of you have Alexa at home or in your room? Wow, you guys are rich already. So it gives you an illusion of, hey, I have somebody like an assistant, right, who plays the right song that I want. So it gives you an experience, right? Do you know how they sell Teslas? So if you go and take a test drive on Tesla, there's a button, there's an insane mode button, right? You press that and it just rockets. So you get that experience that no, electric engines are not slow. You can really go very fast on it. And that's how they started to sell. So they're selling it on experience. There's a company called Philips. They sell these connected bulbs and all that, right? They're no longer selling you a bulb. They cost like 750 rupees, 1,000 rupees. Why? They're selling you an experience. Okay, when you try to sleep, you can tap a button on your phone and it will probably turn it off. Or maybe if you want to have a party, then it will blink and things like that. So they are trying. So these are early signs of the experience economy that people are trying to create. With metaverses and all, this will become more intensified. So you can already see where you should be looking at, or if you have ideas, where you should be looking to go. And this is what I want to talk about a little bit, because AI is fundamentally going to change our world, how we work. So we need to also invest in making the right choices, right? And when I talk about it, so in the near term, a lot of investments that I did, our team at Pi did, they are about making people punch above their weights, right? So if there is a nurse, probably with the help of AI, she's able to diagnose somebody with breast cancer using one of the startups that we invested in called Nirmay. You might want to read about it. Very, very interesting stuff. So today, when they go for screening for breast cancer, the biggest challenge in India is that out of 6 women who gets identified for breast cancer in US, only 1 dies. Whereas in India, it is 2:1. That means out of 2 women who gets identified, 1 dies. Because people don't want, especially women, they find it very hard to get screened because most of the time the radiologist is male, and it is very uncomfortable socially for them to get, screened for it. But their device, which works on a thermal camera, is actually able to screen it without anybody seeing the breast or touching it, and it's a revolutionary device. They recently got an FDA approval, which is a big thing if you know about medical devices, and they are actually getting adoption not just in India but outside India as well, in places like US, Europe, and Japan as well. So what do we see? We see that with intelligence augmentation, we would be able to punch over weight. There's another startup called Locus, which is applying AI to logistics. And if I were to tell you that you have to look at 12 different variables to figure out how the stuff that you ordered on Big Basket comes to you, right? It is impossible for a human being to do it. But their software does it so that the logistic manager can just press a button and it distributes all the tasks to all the drivers. And they're not just doing it in India, right? But I went to Switzerland and I was actually meeting with Swiss Post. The Swiss guys are supposed to be really, really critical about the time and everything, right? And they told me that they're using an Indian startup to deliver the physical mail, okay? And so they told me, oh, it's a company called Locus. So I said, yeah, of course, I'm an investor, so it was a happy moment. But what I realized was that they grew this company in India, and they found early adoption here. But today they're a global company. They just raised sometime back $50 million at 300 million plus valuation. So in near term, we're going to see a lot of use cases which will allow you to punch above your weight. So you can become a better manager, you can become a better doctor, you can become maybe better human being as well. There's a company that we invested in called Vyasa actually, but now since they have become big in US, they call it Vyasa. It's difficult for them to pronounce Vyasa. So it was actually named on Rishi Vyasa. And they are a mental health chatbot. During the time of COVID, they got 485 million conversations on the platform. Because at 4 o'clock in the night, when you are suffering from anxiety, you probably did not have any other human being to talk to. So this mental health chatbot allows you to work out your anxiety or depression that you might be actually having. It was voted as the best app on Google Play Store. In the medium term, and it's very interesting, we feel that we're going to actually see huge number of jobs. And when people look at AI and robotics, and they're like, okay, everything will become automated. Of course, the tangible part of the assets, they will become automated. But it's the intangible part, which is going to be 10 times more. That is where more number of jobs are going to come, right? So all of you are born with very, very unique skill sets. How can I say so? Because each one of you actually have a very different cornea, right? That's how they identify you as a unique human being, right? So if you look at brain, right? So what are the major inputs to the brain? Of course, they go through your cornea, right? So by design, each one of us, we are looking at the world very differently. So our brain that is developing inside is also very uniquely different. But so far, it was very difficult to match people to opportunities, right? Because we never knew, okay, how do you do that, right? So we had very finite number of jobs. People were engineers, people were doctors, and then say, okay, you go here, you work there. But now, a very simple example is, of course, when you call up Uber or Ola, right? They match a driver with opportunity, right? Of course, they're no, right now they're not taking into account, maybe a driver might be really suitable when you want to go to hospital versus, we want to probably go out partying. We don't know that yet, right? But once you get enough data in that's where we feel that a lot of personalization will actually happen, right? So for your own unique skill sets, you might get matched with opportunity. So there is a lot more opportunity which hasn't been mapped. In fact, the estimate says that 3 to 4 trillion dollars worth of opportunity gets wasted because it never gets matched. Maybe there is somebody who has a demand for your skill, maybe in Australia, but they will never be able to reach you because they don't know you, right? So in the medium term, we are going to see more jobs. In the long term, we will be heading for a transformation where we call it, we will no longer be doing jobs, but we'll be doing work. Right? And there is a difference in job versus work. So job is that I give you a task to do, right? Whereas work is something that you want to express yourself, right? You work to express whatever is uniquely inside you, you want to do that. So that's a long shift, but as we develop in terms of intelligence and we start automating whatever is tangible, we will actually free ourselves in terms of more time to actually do stuff that we love to do. Hopefully that's the case. And it is also important that when I talk in terms of timing, where are you? Thankfully, in next 10 to 15 years, we might grow exponentially into a $10 trillion economy. And it's a long jump. We are at 3 trillion. Where are we? 3 trillion? So 10 trillion is like what? Can somebody do the maths here? Huh? 3 times, 3 point some times, yeah. And you also see the size of this working population. So you see that we are going to peak. And it's very interesting because we are also having this massive explosion in computing and also in this working population. So there's a term that I like to use. We call it hyper innovation. That means that you're going to have technology innovation together with business model innovation. That means a lot of change will happen in a very short amount of time. So you probably are lucky because, you probably have a lot of energy. You're 20 years younger than me most of the time. You probably are studying at the right place. And that is very, very important because India is the place where what we call as we have supermarket of problems. We have all kinds of problems, right? You walk on the road, there is a problem, right? The water pollution is a problem, air pollution is a problem, right? So AI needs a lot of data about problems, right? The poor person in US may never see the kind of obstacles on the road that we see, right? If Tesla hits one of the obstacles here, it will be shut down permanently, right? Especially in UP, of course. But in India, of course, we live with that fact that, there could be other than human beings on the road, right? So if we actually, and we have a joke about this, right? So if you can make the cars work in Kanpur, right? Of course, it will work in Silicon Valley, it will work in Europe, everywhere. So this is a fantastic place to be. You have a place where you can experiment. And this is interesting because a lot of startups that we've invested in, everybody, when we were starting to raise money for the fund, everybody used to think, why are you doing it here? Why don't you do it in Silicon Valley? But they grew so fast because they had all the diverse data to experiment with. So their AI was a lot more robust. They beat out every single competition because they got access to this huge variety of data. So it looks very paradoxical, but that's where India is the best place to grow robust AI. We have deep data moat and we have lots of talent. Where do these unicorn founders coming from? And you might be interested to know that after Stanford and Harvard, it's IITs. which are producing the most unicorn founders. So you probably are in the right place. I mean, the pictures on the right, they're all from IIT Kanpur. So you can see if there is a fairly large number of them are here. India is the new China. For every single dollar in last 6 months that has gone to China, $1.50 have come to India. And that's a massive shift. That means that if you have an idea, and if you're working on a company, it's more likely that you will find capital to back those ideas. That's a phenomenal number. It never happened before. That's why I say that you guys are lucky guys. So what we have talent, we have data, and we also have this desperation to adopt. We have to leapfrog, right? If you see the problems that I was talking about, right? We have 1/4 the number of doctors that US has got, and we have 6 times the population, right? It takes 14 years for a doctor to become a good doctor. So we can't go this way. I mean, all of you would appreciate that it is practically impossible. If I look at, 84 million kids in India, they don't go to schools at all, right? There are close to 50,000 schools in which there is no teacher. There are more than 1 lakh schools in which there's only 1 teacher, 1 sweeper, and 1 headmaster. All 3, 1 guy, 1 person. We have 200 million plus people who don't have bank accounts, who can't get loan. Now, this, on one side I say, okay, this is a huge problem, but huge problem means huge opportunity as well. So some of the companies that we invested in, of course, I talked about Locus, Nirmay. There's another one called Karma Life, which I invested in. They're applying for AI for financial services workers, right? So they get paid per gig. So no bank wants to give them loans, right? So they actually have a very sophisticated algorithm which looks at their work data, and it figures out whether they are worthy of loan or not. And they give them extensions, 500 rupees advance whenever they want it, right? And it's a very different segment altogether. And they probably are the first one in the world to be doing that. Now, what they're doing here, they could take it to Europe, US. Gig economy will replace the normal economy that we see. So in some sense, they are probably the early ones starting here. So you can see how the problems that are there in India, because they don't have bank accounts, this is probably the only way to bridge that gap, would actually probably allow them to experiment more with their ideas. This is a company that I was talking about. It's a company called Pixis. The 3 folks from BITS Goa, and the woman in the middle is the CTO. She's the only one who codes, by the way. They have just raised $100 million from SoftBank. They built this company in the middle of the pandemic. Sorry, it's million. It's a small mistake, but I just missed $1 billion. But the point is that, imagine this, that these are folks like you, and they even dropped out. So probably you might want to drop out as well. There's another company that I was talking about, Vaisa. And you can look at it, they were the best app in 2020. The Singapore government bought this app for all of their citizens during the COVID times. So if you were living in Singapore, you would get this app for free. And this is the most important question. Are you building the right problem? Are you building for the right problem? So how do you identify large problems, right problems, right? So you have to practically go after what's the biggest problem that you can find, right? Then you look at what is the niche in which you can dominate, right? But the problem itself is not big, right? The eventual business you can build in it may not be very large, right? Let's say I like to have maybe chocolate brownie in the middle of the night, right? Okay. Now I say, okay, this is a great idea. I'll go after it. I'll deliver chocolate brownie in 10 minutes between 12 and 2. Right? How many of you, by the way, like chocolate brownie here? Wow, looks like a great idea. But is that a scalable business? Is that something that can scale really well, can become $1 billion opportunity? Maybe yes. I don't know. Or maybe not. So it depends upon where I'm coming from. Maybe with automation, you might be able to do that scalable. So you have to identify, one, the problem that you are interested in solving. Second, is it a large problem or not? And I may be knowing or I may not be knowing. So you have to always test the market, right? So you have to go out, talk to people, and that's how the way you will figure out whether it's the right problem or not. Maybe I could say, hey, chocolate brownie is the wrong idea, right? But a whole bunch of people are saying, yes, it's a good idea. So maybe it is. So we may not be able to run the right simulation in our mind. Right? So you have to ask the customer. Right? So the way you find out good large problem is by talking to people who are likely to buy that, people who are willing to pay for it, right? So that is very, very important. So you might have a roughly a good idea, or you think that, okay, it could be a large market, but you still have to go out and ask. So we have, good part being in India is that we have all kinds of problems. So you can have all kinds of crazy ideas. This is a very interesting graph. So when you start out, you're doing your first startup, right? So, you have some observation like I had, like, okay, 12 to 2, I want to have a chocolate brownie in the night when I'm studying for my exams and I'm seeing that I'm hungry and I want some fat, some food which gives me this fat rush and sugar rush. And I could say, okay, let me create a solution, right? So it's a dot because it's your own idea. So it's a dot, right? So you can probably, the ratio of success is like you might try 100 ideas, then one might succeed, right? A lot of people, right? The people you probably saw creating unicorns and all, it was the second or third idea, right? What happened, right? So they tried once, they did a company like Uber, like the guy, who founded Uber? Okay, who founded Ola? So what was it their first idea? Maybe not be. Correct. So what happens when you actually trying a few things in one specific area or domain, that you have this pattern, right? So you are a serial entrepreneur or you have a team, people have tried something before, you get some long-term insight, right? And so you have a hypothesis about an area and you pick up an idea and then you do that. So there, the chances of success increase a bit because it's no longer a dot. It's multiple of those dots. You can draw a pattern, you can figure out, right? So that's why as a VC, we invest in serial entrepreneurs or people who failed before, right? Because by failing, you learn a lot, right? So if you come to me with saying, okay, I tried these 3 ideas and I failed in them, I would be actually very happy to listen to you, contrary to the popular belief, right? If you go to a prof and you said, I failed your course 3 times, you like, get out of this. But I'm very happy. I would love to listen to you, sit down, okay, what did you learn, right? Because unlike academics, we love to promote failures because only by failures you learn, right? If you become success overnight, you will not know why you're succeeding, right? You have not figured out the system internally. So the third one is the graph. And that is the most interesting one, right? Because if I have an innovator network, where like, that's what VCs do. Like I've invested in 14, 15 companies. I get data from all of these guys. Who's succeeding? Why are they succeeding? I'm sitting here computing my brain. Okay, this kind of idea might work, right? Because I've got a graph of opportunities and I'm looking at, okay, all these stakeholders, okay, what idea might succeed, right? So we're trying to do that a little bit more systematically at ARTPARK because we're bringing, academia, government, industry together. So they know what are the large problems to solve, as well as what are the ones where they are willing to pay, right? And academia and the researchers tell us which ones are worth attempting because they're solvable versus they're not. Right? So this idea in the context of the ecosystem has a very high success probability out of the 10 ideas, one might succeed versus, 100 out of 100, one succeeding, right? So you see, if you keep doing stuff or you get to a graph or a network, your idea might actually have a much higher chances of success. Or if you pick up an idea which probably has been vetted out by this multitude of stakeholders, your success probability actually increases. Of course, it was a lot more mathematical slide, but that was a gist of my learning, funding so many companies. So if I look at from the graph perspective, what we have learned, where successful ideas might, or maybe the future unicorn companies might be created. Of course, we are not always right, so please take it with a pinch of salt. We see some themes, some of them are horizontal themes. We see that AI and robotics talent creation is going to be a big problem. Confidential data collaboration is going to be a big problem. How do you communicate with devices, these billions of devices, right? We're going to connect like 5 billion people with 50 billion devices, right? So how these devices and people are going to communicate? That's a huge, large problem. Then of course, this whole computing and infrastructure, computing and communications, they're merging at the edges, right? So that's a huge area we see. I don't know if you're working, would love to talk to you. In terms of vertical themes, they're looking from more application side. Anything remote, I think COVID has just accelerated this whole big opportunity. Anything remote healthcare, remote education, remote logistics, mobility, remote manufacturing, I think there is plenty of opportunity out there. If you're looking at inclusive, what do I mean by inclusive? I'm inclusive by the sense that so far all the startups that people have attempted, even Flipkart and others, they have been going after this 50 to 100 million people, right? Very, very small segment. We're talking about billion plus people, right? Like the telecom networks are going to almost touch in a couple of years time 1,000 million or 1 billion mobile consumers. That's a large number, right? So how do I reach out, right? How do I go from India to so-called Bharat? That's a huge opportunity. So anything which takes what has worked in 50 million or 100 million people, like e-commerce or healthcare, education, finance, 2 billion plus users, is a huge opportunity area. Assistive, right? So, I mean, still I'm talking in English, you're listening in English, but what if I could talk to you in the language of my choice, which could be Hindi. मैं हिंदी में बात कर सकता हूँ और आप English में सुन सकते हैं, या गुजराती में सुन सकते हैं, मराठी में सुन सकते हैं. How would that world be? How different it would be? Because that could really, really change life. Maybe it could be that it may not change things for maybe my kind of profile or my demography, but it could change things for maybe for our parents, maybe for people who are in the villages. It could probably bring them opportunities which they have not seen before. Maps is another one, right? We see that maps don't work very well in rural areas, so that's another opportunity. Then AR, VR, the whole immersive experiences, because these VR devices are going to become cheaper. AR devices are going to become cheaper now. This 5,000 rupees phone, you can run the whole neural network on it. So it can identify images. It can do so many things, right? So the whole gaming and the concept of what is physical and what is digital will merge. In fact, today it was very interesting. We went to, I think it was it was Hall 1, right? And we saw this poster about offline sports. And I was like, wow, this is very interesting. And we took a picture and of course sent it to all our friends that, okay, now you have to tell, okay, the sport is offline. But that's what, COVID has driven us, and it's very interesting, right? And also autonomous. So we're going to see a lot of opportunities in autonomous logistics, transportation. I mean, stuff that should happen by itself, definitely, right? So we're going to see quite a few companies, and some of them will become unicorns. So how do you go about building something, right? So yes, you need to solve all the 5 critical things that I talked about. Data, how do I get data? How do I get talent? How do I persuade my fellow batchmate, botmate to come and take part in the stupidest idea he has ever heard, right? How do I get him to work with me? Can I get my professor to give me his research input about that idea? And then, of course, can I convince, apart from my parents, somebody else to give me money? Right? So how do I do that? And that's a tough area, because AI and robotics, if the moment you go into any of these tech areas, the challenge is that it takes a while. Right? It takes a while for you to, I mean, the technology to work, the idea to be proven with the customer, and from there, a small prototype to a product. It's a big long journey, right? So how do you navigate that? So you might have to look at grants. How do you figure out if you can get some grants from somewhere? How do you bootstrap the idea? How do you get the early pilot, early customer? Like I see a lot of these robotics companies, they go on Kickstarters and they do a campaign there saying that, okay, what if you were to be able to use this, and I'll give you a 60% off or 40% off, and they get these early user validations, right, which can get the thing moving. So you might have to figure some of these interesting parts out, and then of course once it matures a bit, you are able to prove that, okay, this prototype is working. The robot which is supposed to wave its hand when it sees you is finally able to at least wink, not wave the hand. Then yeah, we might want to go to some angel investors, or you could come to maybe investors like us and say, okay, yeah, this looks interesting. You have a good team. I can see what you're aiming to build, you can build, right? So then we might want to invest in you, right? So you have this whole process where you go from an idea, you turn it into a prototype, from prototype you turn it into a product, and from product you turn it into a company, then you want to scale that company, right? So for each of these places, you actually have different ways of supporting, right? Shall I press upgrade or? Okay, it worked. So that's a good part, right? You can try things and they may work. So that's what happens. So all the early exploration, technology maturation, you need to find some good place where you can experiment without burning too much of your parents' money or your girlfriend's money, and you sort of get through this red spot. Then all the fun starts, where you could actually raise some money. You could look at product market fit. Product market fit is that, okay, I have this product, I go to X customer, he says, okay, I want to buy it. So you have to get at least more than one customer, or typically 2-3 customers to buy it. So then you get the product market fit. Then of course you scale it. Scale it means that I prove it in India, I prove it in Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa, and I start to scale. Or within one country itself, I go from, okay, one type of customers to a whole new segment of customers, right? So there are various ways in which you transition, and of course you either sell out. So as an entrepreneur, you're always selling, right? So you're selling to your girlfriend, your parents, your girlfriend's parents to get married. It's very important. Or to investors, to angel investors, or to some other company who's going to buy you if it's a mergers and acquisitions, or you might be selling to the general public if you're going IPO. So that is a very critical skill. So as a founding team, you need to have that art of selling what you feel the value is going to lie, where the value is going to lie, right? And this is important. How many of you know this character, by the way? Anybody else? I think Star Trek is very, very ancient, but yeah, that is Data. If you are a Star Trek fan, I mean, of course, not many of you might be here right now. I think it's our generation thing, but yeah, you might want to read about him. But this is very critical, right? So any of these companies, especially if you're trying to build AI and robotics companies, the big moat actually comes from data that you're acquiring, right? So the Tesla is hard to beat right now, because they have so many miles that they have gone through, and they have more Teslas on the road. So every time you take out a Tesla, you're actually feeding the data back into the network, and that network is growing all the time. And because of that, their AI or robotics is going to be mature. So this what we call as dark data loop. So dark data is data which is coming alive because you're building some kind of interface, right? And then you have this organic data loop. So you always start with some kind of data loop which is making some data which was dark earlier. And so let's say if I look at a company that was like applying AI to pathology, right? So you have these blood slides, right? And you scan them and you figure out whether you have dengue or not, right? And you should go to the hospital or not. So how did they start? So this is, by the way, this company is called Sictuple. You can look them up. Very interesting company. So they went to one of the diagnostic labs and they said, we're going to scan all your blood slides and we'll also share the data with you. And the lab agreed. So they scanned that. So they basically, by scanning, they were able to convert that data, which was kind of like a dark data, into some data that they can analyze. So they eventually ended up building a device which sit next to the physician. So if you go to the doctor today, he does this A/B testing with you, sort of like saying that, okay, I don't know whether you have corona or not, or dengue or not. I give you this medicine and you come back to me after 3 days, and then they will give you some other test. So they do these iterations because they don't know what you have, right? So, but with this, you just take a small puncture and then you put it on the slide and it scans it, and within 5 minutes it tells you what's the state that your blood slide is in. Now, the moment you convert, and they have got these devices all over India now, so they're collecting data from all of these places, right? And now their AI is so good. They started with this very interesting story. They started with 5 pathologists on their board. So every time the slide will come, all these 5 pathologists will vote whether this is correct or not. In 12 months' time, they went past these 5 guys. That means their accuracy level was higher than any one of these guys. After that, they actually had to design an algorithm to determine whether this is correct or not, right? So right now, they are almost at a 16 to 17 years of experience doctor. I mean, they've seen the same number of slides, right? They've seen millions of slides by now, right? So once you start, getting this data, the moat actually, keeps getting bigger. So for AI companies, the moat doesn't come from, your marketing or the brand, but it's come from data. Think global, act local, prove and expand. So while you might think, that, okay, this problem is going to be large. Like, I'll give you a problem which is actually very interesting. Like the aging populations in US and Europe, right? They are getting older. They will need, or Japan, right? I mean, in Japan, by the way, my daughter, I have 2 daughters. The younger one informed me the other day that they're closing the primary schools because nobody is young enough. So they don't need primary schools, so they're closing it. Right? And I was like, wow, this is very interesting because the population is aging there. So they need, help, right? How do, you take care of the elderly? There's not enough young population to be out there. And that's a big problem to solve, because if you can solve it, then you could build robots. We are trying to build one in ARTPARK, which is trying to use what we call as this concept called avatar robotics. So you will have a robot along with the patient, and you will try to manipulate the robot from here, right? And so that way the nurse don't have to migrate to Japan. They could be sitting here or maybe in a small village in Kerala, and they could be able to take care. How are we trying to help? So this is an interesting one. So you have university ecosystems which are good for research, and on the other side we used to have these companies that would be investing in, right? And we used to have this interesting observation about this phenomena. It's called placement. So placement is almost like this Russian roulette, right? So you go to that and then you end up somewhere, you earn a lot of money or some money. But after 2-3 years, they figure out that, hey, this consulting thing wasn't for me, right? So I see a lot of, young IIT graduates, they get placed in McKinsey, AT Kearney, some bank, and then they spend 2-3 years. Then they come back and say, okay, this is okay, I've earned some money, but this is not really what I want to do. I want to do a startup, right? But then after, what happens that in 2-3 years, they've lost the connection with whatever area that they were passionate about or they were digging in, right? And that actually is a big challenge, because after 3 years, you might want to go back again, but that the whole space has moved on, right? So 3 years is a lot of time in technology. So they end up doing, interesting startups, of course, but you can build some differentiation, but if you make the groceries come to you in 19 minutes versus 12 minutes versus 8 minutes, how do you build the differentiation? Right? So I see a lot of people, young people, after they do a lot of these interesting jobs, they try to do Me Too startups. So they try to copy an idea which has worked in US, and they try to somehow, and I see one point of time, every single person is only trying to do those kind of startups, right? So maybe, everybody's talking to everybody and trying to pitch. Like right now, everybody's trying to do edtech startups, right? And I was like, okay, this is great, but like, what is the fundamental assumption that you're trying to break? Because everybody's trying to do the same thing. Okay, I'll offer online courses. Great, you can do that. But then there are hundred of you trying to do that, right? So eventually what will happen? You're competing for same kind of attention. That means that you will be going to the Google, buying ads or buying ads on Facebook, trying to do the same thing. And it will become very hard for you to raise money or, scale that. Because remember one thing, which is very important, that sales and marketing, if you have a startup or an idea which relies on sales and marketing, it is very hard for it to scale exponentially. Because sales and marketing implies that you have to put people on the job, and they will always scale linearly. It's technology that scales non-linear. So it's important to figure out, right? Like a company like Google, right, which took in only 25 million, but it is at a 1.5 or 2 trillion dollars in terms of market cap. So that has a capital efficiency of thousands of X, right? And that's a kind of startup that could be really interesting because it will actually allow you to scale really well. It's okay, it's okay. Okay, something worked. So that's where we are trying to do an interesting pitch in here. We are trying to create what we call as ARTPARK Innovation Fellows. We will be supporting people who are interested in pursuing an idea. So we're going to give them scholarship so that they can actually keep working on it. So you might be completing your bachelor's or master's, and you want to follow an idea. So we will actually assuring that we will be paying you enough sustenance for you to probably provide an answer to your parents or girlfriend that I'm still financially viable, possibly. And you bridge that gap, right? And you take that idea, convert that into a product or a POC, and we will help you with the whole transition. And of course, we're just launching this Art Venture Fund. It's a $100 million venture fund to support AI and robotics companies. We can invest in them as well. Well, these are some of the early shoots. We have an ARTPARK innovation program. Some of them are from IIT Kanpur. At least I can see a couple of them. CD Space, they're building next generation drones for future logistics, and STEMpedia is building AI and robotics platform for next generation learning for K-12. And there are a whole bunch of others. But these are, of course, early shoots. But this is very important. So how many of you know this painting? It's a very interesting painter. His name is Monet. He's credited with the birth of Impressionism, which was a major movement in art. And it's interesting. His paintings were unique because it took almost 12 years to build a Japanese garden. If you find time, please search about him. He actually became a gardener, and he took out a large space, and in spite of his neighbors, he managed to build a large garden. And in that garden, he would put an easel at different places, and at different point of time in the day, he would go. So 4 to 5, he's going to paint on this easel. versus 5 to 6 somewhere else. And with that, he was actually able to study the physics of light and how to replicate that with paints. And that's why his paintings actually, after, of course he died, of course he was famous a little bit. As a painter, you become more famous once you die because then you can't produce more, right? So actually I went to one of the French galleries and I paint as well. And I asked him like, when I would be rich as a painter, and he said that after you die, of course. So, so that's the sad part. But yeah, I mean, with companies, you don't have to die. You could still be living, and you might actually see some money. So it took him 12 years to create that garden, that unique garden, and which allowed him to paint. So you need to have patience with your ideas. They will take time to mature. They will take time to mutate, and of course, that's why that ecosystem becomes very important. But you have to have patience. I mean, patience with ideas. I mean, to grow a company, it takes 10 to 12 years easily, right? So you have to stay patient, convince your girlfriend or movers or your husband or future husband that stick with my idea. Well, don't give up on your dreams. This is an interesting suggestion. Of course, you could keep sleeping. But if you don't want to keep sleeping, then you can build those dreams in real life. And yeah, we feel that we can help. If you want to reach out to us, you can scan this. You might be able to reach out to us. You can follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn. We actually have a robotics competition. I don't know how many of you participated in that. We did a robotics challenge last year where we thought that it would be nice to clean the public toilets because they're quite stinky most of the time. And it was very interesting. We had like 29 teams participate and they worked through COVID. We're going to have a final in, I think in May, mid-April. I think they're actually having the finals. We'll share with you if you guys want to watch it, of course. But yeah, would love to see if you have ideas and dreams that you want to build. Please reach out to me or Subhashish. My email ID is Umakant, UMAKANT @artpark.in. If you want to take part in interesting stuff like he's building these autonomous drones. If you want to be a part of that, you can do an internship at ARTPARK. If you want to, we also have a opening in venture fund. So if you want to analyze ventures or learn how to do that, you could turn up as an intern. And of course, we will not allow you to sleep because we don't have bots for analyzing ideas yet. But yeah, you can have a lot of fun. And of course, if you want to build stuff or you have cool stuff there or cool ideas about building stuff, then you can apply for ARTPARK Innovation Fellowship, and we support you. We hope that, and also put you in touch with data research and domain as a focus. Subhashish has great ideas, so he's always there. Reach out to him as well. So thank you for your time, and if you have questions, please shoot them. Or I have managed to put you to sleep. So yeah, go ahead. Don't call me sir. I mean, it always makes me. I mean, I've not been knighted. Of course, I would love to be. I mean. Find somebody who has got ideas similar to yours, or who has capability. Of course, you never have money to invest. Yeah, but this is very interesting because if you can sell, see, with money, of course people will come, right? But the real test of your selling skill is when you don't have money to pay. So in fact, I would advise all of you to work, if you want to become an entrepreneur, work in all of these voluntary organizations, right? Where you have to beg people to come, right? Like you work in Techkriti or whatever is going on right now, right? It's like, So whoever is that courtier, who is there, like you have to literally have to beg people to यार थोड़ा हाथ लगा दे इधर मेज खसका दे इधर ये banner बना दे, right? So you have to do that, right? So that's a great learning, right? So when you become a CEO, you practically have to beg everyone. Right? So you beg the investor, you beg your girlfriend, you beg your fellow workers, right? You are the person who's sweeping the floor. So you have to decide, right? And by the way, you get fired the first, right? So if you don't perform, you get fired. CTO is on the way, then nobody fires the CTO, right? Because if you fire the CTO, God knows what they've built, right? Nobody will be able to replicate that. So yeah, they never fire the CTO. But I mean, so of course somebody has to become a CEO, right? So please, whoever is there, so you have to find people with complementary skill sets. That's very important. So if you know how to sell, then maybe you might have to find people who can build. It's very difficult to have both the skills in the same person. Of course, it's very rare. Not that it can't be there, but yeah, most of the time it's very hard to find. So you have to find people with complementary skill sets, and of course, it's very hard to work with them, right? Like if people, so mostly you will have a lot of fights, of course. So as long as you're not killing each other, you will be fine. That's what I would say. So just come close to killing, but don't kill each other. I think then you will be able to survive as a team. So of course you will have different. If you don't have different ideas, then it's not a great team, because then nobody is actually looking out for black swan thing that might actually kill your startup, right? So you may not kill each other, but the world might kill your startup, right? So you have to find a nice balance somewhere. Don't call me sir. I'm not knighted yet. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah, I think there are a lot of books, especially the one about dreaming and sleeping. I think that's a great book. But I'm just joking. Honestly speaking, every single startup journey is very unique, right? You have your own motivation for starting, whatever idea that you have or you're passionate about, right? In fact, I actually have this interesting perspective that, entrepreneurship is a disease of the mind, right? Where you actually see the reality, which is not a reality now, but you see it way more clearly, whatever is going to happen. Right? And then you try to convince everyone that this is the real reality, right? So you need to have that, that belief in your own idea. Right? So if you are reading a book, that's great. You can read. I mean, of course, people like to read. We like to analyze. But it might be better if you figure out, how to talk to customers. So there are a lot of books which actually tell you how do you go about, how do you talk to customers, how do you develop the communication skills. Read those kind of books. Don't read how to start up and all that. I mean, that topic was misleading. I mean, so because your idea is unique, you are going to follow a unique path. If you follow a pattern, then you will probably die somewhere, right? Because so the corona succeeded because it did not follow any pattern, right? So a good idea is like a virus, right? It multiplies at a furious pace because it's unique, and the whole world will try to kill it, right? But it succeeds anyway. So it has to be like a virus. Anybody else? Sorry, I did not give you any books that you want me to know, but of course you can read books. I mean, read books are good. Like this lean startup book is good. A lot of people quote it, but it doesn't work in AI and robotics. Most of the people who read that book and tried to implement it in their startup, they're dead. So please, be careful what you read and what you follow. Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, reality is a lot of mathematics also. Well, we haven't built machines which can build themselves yet. Yeah, maybe that's a good idea for you to work on. How do you build machines which builds AI? Who knows? Might be sitting on a big unicorn idea right there. Yeah, maybe that's a problem for a lot of people. So if you can build an AI which builds AI for others, that's a good problem. or you can convince somebody to build along with you. Anybody else? Great opportunities. I mean, a lot of people are now using drones to spray. I see quite a few startups trying to de-weed and all of those things, which is very interesting. And especially in US, what has happened after COVID is that people have gone back to Mexico or other places, and they're not getting enough people. So especially in US and Europe, you know, it is getting adopted at furious pace. In China, I see there are quite a few startups, especially in drone space, which are trying to use. But yeah, it could be a cool idea. Yesterday we were discussing you can build a drone which can grab a chicken and might have other uses, of course. But yeah, or maybe pluck the fruits from the trees. Those are difficult things. And what happens that the fruits especially the fruit bearing trees, they flower at the same time, right? So the people to plug them is always very limited, and if you don't plug them at the right time, then of course they actually have a major challenge. So yeah, so that could be an interesting problem. Yeah, anybody else? No? Have I managed to put all of you to sleep? You don't have questions? Yeah, we're done? Okay, thank you. Till we build a bot that can answer questions automatically. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for organizing. And I wanted to thank all of you to make it on a Saturday afternoon. It's very rare. It's probably only possible in IIT Kanpur. So, oh sorry, Sunday. My mind is also not working today. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for coming over. And we would love to have you in ARTPARK in Bangalore. We're also trying to start a small section here as well. And if you want to work on challenging, interesting problems, then please reach out to us. Thank you.